Welcome back to another new episode of Pod by the Bay, presented by the Bay Area Examiner, also presented by our good friends at homefieldapparel.com. So you use our code BA15, you get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com, or you can use our affiliate link in the description if you've already uh, been a veteran home field shopper like we are here at the Bay Area Examiner. And that just helps the site out. So either you can, emails are free. So, new email, use the code BAE15, get 15% off your first order. Or if you know, racking up home field points or whatever they got, use our affiliate link there to do all your shopping for, we're just outside graduation season. You might have high school graduates going to a new college that maybe is USF, maybe not. You can get a nice little home field apparel shirt for them. So check it out, homefieldapparel.com. Use our code BA15 for 15% off your first order.
And you know what, Seth? I mean, home field apparel, if you've got the shirts, you know what they're all about. They're more than shirts nowadays. They got some really cool hats they've been releasing. They've got some really great quarter zips they've been releasing.
Yes,
And these
the
aren't
quarter zip
USF
is
quality.
there's a nice USF quarter zip that's calling my name. So
Yeah, it's some really solid, and they're not just doing like the retro logos. Like before, it was just like, oh, here's a couple logos. Now it's like they're really kind of diving into, like the '90s style fonts and whatnot of just, or if your team wins a national championship or does well in their athletics, they'll go ahead and like release these very specific shirts that, like, yes, your program probably does as well, but it's really nice. It's not only graduation season, Father's Day's coming up. I know my dad really loves all his home field apparel that he got when the hurricane hit us. He loved my little home field hoodie so much that he got another. So excuse the cat as she wants to also be part of these corduroy hats. I mean, I'm just going through and looking. I know this isn't personal veto shopping time, but I mean, some of this stuff's they've really expanded since they've been a company, and it's really good to kind of check out what they're doing at any point in time. But
and they're
yeah,
launching a bunch of new hats this summer. They usually launch new collections. They had a nice baseball collection during baseball season, launching some hats for different schools this summer. So you'll probably get some other type of launch right before football season as well. But be sure to go to homefieldapparel.com for all your college apparel needs. Vito, there's a lot to talk about, but we did get a nice little gift today. We got some announced times and networks for some USF football games. So we knew the 5:30 Boise State game. That one was known. But now let's go ahead and share the schedule here. We've got
so it's been a while since we've done a Pod by the Bay proper. We did talk about a lot of a lot of this on the Ponderosa. So just as a heads up, if you thought we were just gone, most of the stuff was Ponderosa exclusive. So if you're not part of the Ponderosa, to get those extra podcasts, $10 a month, get you everything that you need. And even if there's not a lot going on when the football world, once recruiting was done, when spring game is done, we're still talking baseball, softball, and all this on the side on the Ponderosa. But yeah, that Boise State releasing at 5:30 on Thursday. I don't think I've ever seen that or any precedent in having a afternoon game that early on a Thursday. Seth, have you?
No, I can't recall. So this is strange. This is getting to, we're getting to the point where the TV networks are more and more and more powerful and getting more powerful than even conferences at this point. So it seems like TV networks just run college football. ESPN obviously has the playoff, has their finger in a lot of different pies around college football. So yeah, you're kind of at their mercy. So 5:30, not only at 5:30, but a 5:30 Thursday kickoff. You'll be the only game on. I'm pretty sure. So you'll have a lot of eyes. So as long as you don't start like that BYU game a couple years ago, where you give up a touchdown on the first play from scrimmage.
And I'm not even saying
to make a statement.
Yeah, I'm not even saying this. That is the first week of classes. So from a student perspective, that's your home game.
That's tough.
If you have a game it's like if you have a class on Thursday, it's drop ad week. You need to make sure you make it. But at the end of the day, you're at the mercy of ESPN. That's kind of part of what this is and where we're going. So you're the only game on, so might as well go ahead and make the best of it. I don't mind Thursday Labor Day weekend. There's so many games going on across the entire slate. If you get lost on a Saturday, totally understand that. But man, Thursday, if you're in prime time, I don't even care if you're up against. I think they're up against Cincinnati, Nebraska that evening. They're putting them right afterwards on ESPN. I don't even care if you're up against them. That's only 2. But man, 5:30, that is just brutal. It's going to be hot. Maybe that helps you, but that's
true.
Idaho. You're a Boise State fan. You're watching this game at 2.
Yeah, it's tough. So you should have hopefully some advantage here in weather, but we've thought that before and it hasn't really worked out. Wisconsin comes to mind.
Buddy.
So, but on the positive side, I guess I know some of the kick times are not everyone's favorites, but on the positive side, I think 5 of the first 6 games are on national TV. So you got Boise on ESPN. The Florida game, you are at Florida. That kicks off at 4:15. That will be on the SEC network. I guess at Miami at 4:30 on the CW. That's national TV, right?
CW is national TV, and I don't really care. You're going to be watching Supernatural, and it's going to go right into that. And afterwards, you're going to watch reruns of like Supergirl or The Flash. Okay, so look, listen, as a dedicated Arrowverse fan, CW, not so bad. Oh, I get that people say CW, what's going on with that, but it's national. Everyone's got it on their antenna. Everyone's got it as cable. You're able to stream it. So that's ACC. So, that's going to be okay.
The good old C-dub there. And then your South Carolina State game. This is the one that I think some people are it seems to be drawing the most ire. It's a noon kickoff, but that's also because you have a Rays game that night. So you couldn't really double dip. And this was one that we had some people in the Discord kind of talking about for a while. And we had a few people, I think, predict that this, maybe even Steve might have even thrown that in there too as well, that this was a distinct possibility because of the night game for the Rays. So, and then I think the Bucks might play the next day as well at home. So, yeah, so they're gonna have to turn things around really fast in that parking lot. So.
And I'll give a shout out. I mean, friend of the show, Michael Steuben, who he actually did the research and said that USF has never played a FCS game at home prior to 3:30 in history. So that one is a very weird one.
Yeah. So now, that one's kind of the one where you feel like, all right, it's not really on TV. It's not, it's not, you don't have to worry about the national TV game. It's a home game. It's not a conference game. Like you feel like you can set it, but unfortunately, you get the Rays. Odd situation.
And that's all because of the hurricanes. But nooner in September for any team in Florida or the Southeast, really, it's just brutal. It's brutally hot. That's your first Saturday home game, and you don't get a lot of them. So the fact of the matter is, you get that at noon. That is tough.
I think that is the biggest gripe with the schedule is the home slate is not super fan friendly. I think in terms of
if you're trying to sell football tickets, this is a really tough one. You don't get a Power 5 opponent at home. You don't get your
Boise's like a big name, great, but it's Boise, awesome, cool. When is it? Thursday at 5:30. Okay, that's tough. And then Charlotte is a Friday game. FAU will be homecoming. They keep trying to make FAU happen at the conference level. That's a Saturday game. Then you got a Thursday game against UTSA. And then Rice to finish. So you have, is that 2 home Saturday games?
Yeah, 3. Technically, with South Carolina.
With South Carolina, yeah. So 3. So
3 out of your 6.
Buddy. Yeah. So I mean, the good part is you're going to be on national TV a lot. So
I'm going to be the spinster here. I'm just going to talk about it. I think that's I think that's the conference and or ESPN or whoever thinking that USF's going to be much improved this year, have a lot of marquee games, and be pretty close to competing for something for the conference. That's why they want to go ahead and feature them.
I would agree with that. I think that's kind of I think that's the idea. Now, I'm interested to see how this would affect recruiting.
I
Because
mean, Seth, tell me, when do high schools play football?
typically, the guys you're recruiting will be playing on Friday nights.
Well, that's a
So
problem.
that could be an issue. So I'd imagine the boys' game will probably be a big visit game. FAU will probably be a big visit game. And then maybe, South Carolina. UTSA might not be a bad one too. A Thursday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird. It's not super, and this is kind of the bad side of especially I think this is a little bit of what you're going to get if you're not in a power conference nowadays, because at least you can get some pushback in some of the power conferences, like, hey, we're not making I'd say USF's probably an upper tier program in the American, like, or upper tier programs in Power Four conferences having to play so many weeknight games, probably not. So
No, but if the American is looking at these are when our marquee spots are going to be,
yeah, I think that's what they're like. Hey, we want to put our best teams. We want to put a good product on national television. So there's that part of it. Let's see what good friend Colin is joining the show.
Oh,
Colin,
hello.
what do you think about playing like 17 weeknight games this year? If you're a USF fan, we just talked about you have 3 home Saturday games. That's it.
I don't know if that annoys me more than playing South Carolina State at noon. Because
that's one of your 3. That's one of your 3 home Saturday games.
Because you're playing, because apparently the Rays and all 10,000 of their fans, who should be like 87 games out of the AL East at that point, are going to play at 7:00, and so we got to move our game to the heat of the day. Go to hell. Like that annoyed me more than anything. I'm looking forward to the attendance after back-to-back weeks of Florida and Miami, and then playing a nooner against South Carolina State. Dozens and dozens of students will be at that game.
Well,
and,
the real tough part about that is like how many visit days can you set up? Now, Thursday games, I think you could probably have decent visitor lists, maybe, but it's going to have to be local. But how many, like, the official? Now, I think that's why they're probably going heavy in the summer, and they've been doing that anyways. But like, South Carolina State, you're going to make that a big visit night? Probably not. Like,
I don't want anybody there.
You only got 3. You only got 3 Saturday games, so now you got 2. You got to get people into FAU or Rice.
I think the new way that, assuming again, and I was at the NCAA championships this week for golf and was talking to a lot of people in the industry, and we preface all conversations with this, and I'll bring it to the podcast, which is assuming House passes, because it hasn't passed yet, and but assuming House passes, I think visits will matter less than ever. Kids are gonna. You know what I mean? Like, look, this is secure the bag time. It is much less about how you show up on. This is much more about salary cap management and things like that, and what dollars you're able to offer. So while I'm not thrilled that we'd only get 3 visits, and if there were kids on the fence, but guess what? Those kids on the fence, they're not deciding anymore based on who's got the cuter host attendant, Golden Girls, whatever we call those now, or who's got the more fun campus, or who's had better kegger on Friday night. This is about securing the bag. And so for these kids, I think the visits will matter less than ever. So I'm a little less worried about it under what we assume will be the new way that college football recruiting gets done, but we shall see.
Do you think it'll be like that at the G5 level? I think USF does a really good job on the NIL side, but we were going to talk about some commits later. Like, some of the teams they're up against is like, like Marshall or, FIU, Georgia State. Like, is the bag going to be the only thing that matters? I guess you probably have the upper hand in those situations, right?
If USF's offering a kid 50 and Morgantown's Morgantown, what is it? Huntington. If Huntington's offering them 65, you take the 50 in Tampa. But if they're offering 100 in Huntington, you might just go suffer in the middle of nowhere.
Are they offering 100 to anybody in Huntington?
That's a good question. That place actually, I mean, that's all they have. So like, I'm going to assume that they're going to have several $1 million to spend.
Yeah, they just lost their entire coach and half their team to Southern Miss. So, as examples go.
Yeah, that's probably not the best example, actually, because that is what happened at Marshall last year was a super weird situation where the coach and the team hated the administration pretty fervently. That was
win the conference and leave. Wow.
So, Colin, we were talking about this before you popped on. Is this a sign USF they're having to play a ton of weeknight games, ton of odd time slot games, but most of those will be on national television. Is that a sign of like expectations for this team, you think, from the conference and from ESPN?
No, it's a sign that they need to fill inventory. You can
fill it with just about anything, right? Like,
yeah, no. I think, look, there's two tiers. Well, there's more than two tiers, but let's call USF and the American Conference sort of like a third tier inventory league. The top two leagues, Big Ten, SEC, are the top tier one inventory. ACC, Big 12, I would call that like a tier two. And then there's sort of like, and the rest, but we are certainly above I would rather watch South Florida and Memphis than I would Louisiana Monroe or any MAC game. I'd say that's like a tier four. So I think it's just sort of like you fall into tier three, you're like at the top of tier three. Well, you're still going to be playing in tier three windows, which is why you only get 3 Saturday home games. And those tier three windows tend to be a lot of weeknights and a lot of off days. So you're the best of where you land. And so I think that probably dictates it more than anything.
I guess that's what I'm saying in terms of conference, in terms of expectations for teams in the conference. Do you think this means that, like, okay, we expect USF to be in the upper level of this conference, so they're going to be the team we pick to play Thursday nights?
I would expect this team to compete. It's year 3 for a coach that's, certainly talked a good game, bowl game record to back it up. I think they've played well in 2 bowl games so far. The fact that he's gone to back-to-back bowl games is a hell of an accomplishment, I think, considering where the program was when he got here. But now you got to take that next step and you got to get to the next level. And so that means competing with teams like Memphis and Tulane, and not just getting, doors offed in those games. You need to be hanging around and making some noise. So, I expect this team, do I expect them to win the league? No. But can they be somewhere between a 7-5 and an 8-4? Yeah, probably. I just think the schedule's probably too tough to ever think that you would be able to go beyond that, though.
Yeah. So, for example, for reference, Tulane, it looks like plays 3 weeknight games this year.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah, that's a team that's
2 Thursdays and a Friday.
Yeah, that's a team that's had some championship success at this point. And they've got a little bit of a brand now in football. So I would say it's Memphis and Tulane probably. And then in that second tier, well, UTSA is probably in that same tier with USF league-wise. I would say those are probably that next chunk of teams.
They have 3 weeknight games as well. It looks like UTSA does.
And then there's sort of like everybody else, and it's when will Trent Dilfer get fired? I think that's sort of the most. I'm here in Vegas right now, and it is off the board for Trent Dilfer to be the first AAC coach fired.
Okay.
You can't even buy a ticket. Not that you could buy that ticket anyway.
USF gets them gets them in Birmingham November 22nd. So it's really just do you think it'll happen by then or after then?
Yeah, the only question is, does the athletic director fire him, or do they fire his ass too? This is going to be a disaster.
Memphis also has 3 weeknight games.
Okay,
yeah,
so that seems to be kind of the. So
but think about that. There will be teams in the Big Ten and the SEC that will go a decade between Friday night games. You know what I mean? Like this is.
I think Florida playing Florida State on Black Friday was their first one in like 30 years.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
That was a couple years ago.
Look, that everybody blocks out. The Saturday nooners are going to be, your second tier top, Big Ten SEC. That's kind of what they want to lean into. And then those night games are going to be the best games on the board. I still think they're going to honor, even though it's no longer on CBS. I think they will honor the traditional SEC game of the week 3:30 window as the season goes on. I think that's just such a part of college football at this point that you don't really want to change that. And so that just leaves, where everybody else can fit in. When you're making the chart, when the season starts, you're going to start with those teams, and then everybody else is just sort of filled in around it. And you want to have your game on against as few other games as possible for both ratings and gambling reasons, honestly. That's true.
Yeah, so it looks like most teams, or at least the top tier, all have 3 conference games on weeknights. USF just also happens to have that kind of marquee game against Boise State. They got pushed to a Thursday as well. So,
that Thursday night open, that Labor Day weekend open that they've gone to for now, I guess about 10, 12 years now that we've seen the Thursday night opens probably. I think it's a great opportunity. You know what I mean? I like being on that. I would like to play that game every year. I'd like to play on Thursday every year. I think, especially getting it at home, I think it's a terrific way to start the season. So I'm not displeased about that at all. I think that's a great way to start. But some of the rest of the schedule, it was not a great schedule for season ticket holders anyway.
This is a make sure you reserve your tickets in the new stadium type selling. That was the sales pitch for this year, I'd imagine, right?
Yep. Yeah, you got to do that.
I used to have to write those materials for the beloved alma mater. Okay, when we were updating the Sundome, when we were like, okay, we're going to reseat the Sundome. Actually, I had left, and they brought me back to do some consulting work, and I was writing some of that stuff. And let's just say it's an interesting process, and you're sort of promising things. You're saying, oh, these things are all going to sell out. Remember that they're supposed to be, according to the original pro forma after the Sundome got redone, that there's supposed to be 8 different people paying. I think it's either $100,000 or $150,000 a year for the suites on top of the tickets. So it was like $100,000. There were going to be 8 people, 8 groups, 8 companies, 8 something that were going to buy a suite for USF men's and women's basketball for $100,000 for the suite, and then buy the tickets on top of it. I don't think that's worked out real well. So I'm just saying, I'm very excited for the new stadium. I think it's very, very cool. But all of this, get in now. You better buy your tickets now, or you're not gonna have your seating. Somehow these things tend to work out. If you want to roll up 3 weeks before opening kickoff in 2027, I'm gonna like your chances to get some good seats. I'm just throwing it out there. Apologies to our friends in the development department at the beloved alma mater, but these things do tend to work out in the long run.
Listen, you've got to be able to. You've got to sell tickets this year somehow. So that's what.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do whatever you can.
This is a tough home slate in terms of not
somebody
just
with a lot of. I haven't had season tickets in years, but as somebody who had season tickets for a long time for basketball, women's basketball, everything, I got a lot of priority points. I was donating 3% of my salary back to the program when I worked there. I'm on that list, and I'm gonna be okay. But you don't break your back buying season tickets for 2025 instead of 2027, folks. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, MK. I didn't mean to do it on public. These things tend to work out. I'm just throwing it out there.
Oh man. Well, we know if we get clapback, that means they at least listen. So we'll take that trade off.
All right, so Colin, you were out at anything else on the schedules before? I was going to transition to golf. Do you have anything else here, Vito?
I think you had a great transition right there, brother. Go for it.
Yeah, all right, I appreciate. I just want to make sure I don't want to cut Vito off. He's always got good points, so I don't want to miss one.
Seth, give me some hope, Seth, that they're not coming back 0-3 for South Carolina State. Boise, I feel like Boise's gettable.
I think Boise's winnable.
Boise's a very gettable team.
Boise just had a wide receiver or an a basketball player transfer in for wide receiver. So
I think they're. I mean, they lost. They relied on Genty quite a bit, and it wasn't like it was all the holes are blown open and anybody could run through them. He was obviously a really good player. His first round draft pick. So we'll see. I don't know. I think that's a gettable one at home. You actually will get the benefit of the heat playing at 5:30, possibly. So I don't know. I think that one's gettable. Florida, Miami, I don't think, but you never know.
I think Miami. It's just the thing with this Miami team is that while they will certainly do something stupid, I mean that's just a given. And they did lose the best quarterback in the country, according to the NFL at least. But they've got reinforcements coming in, and they'll be fine. I think
they're going to be way down at receiver,
but they're just going to have depth everywhere, especially in the line.
The offensive line's going to be good.
Yeah,
but that will throw you some picks. It's not going to be the same Miami team you played last year, that's for sure. Now they might be a little bit better on defense, possibly, but Florida, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be quite yet, but I think they'll be pretty tough at home. So
I would say they probably have a quarterback that we'd all want.
I think he's pretty good. That's the one thing that's pretty sure. But so I think Boise's a possibility, but it's the playoffs are probably you can probably go ahead and not book your playoff tickets. But a conference championship, I think, is a good goal. So
you know what? Actually, with the new structure, which we are all putting our faith in Ted Cruz, kids, to fix this. Let me just say it again: it's Ted Cruz that we're all putting our faith in.
Is this if the House settlement passes?
Even if House passes, I think we're still putting a lot of our faith in Ted freaking Cruz, which
incredible.
And Cory Booker,
his record at attending games as a fan is any indication.
Holy mackerel!
It's not good.
How'd you like to go to so many games and lose that you're a meme?
It's tough. Drake Love, right? Isn't that the
yeah, Drake too. Oh my god,
Drake and Ted Cruz, not great.
I hope
they all go to. I hope they go to every game in Florida for the Stanley Cup. I truly do. Drake, Ted Cruz, show up, please be in Sunrise. I'm excited. I'm excited for football. I'm just starting to do some scanning on some stuff now. I try and step away when the season's over, brain break, and especially now from a betting perspective, I've been talking to a couple of guys that I would consider pretty sharp, and even we're barely starting to scratch the surface now. Starting to dig any earlier than this with all the transfers and all the movement and everything is just pointless. It's a completely different sport now. The only things that are the same are the bands and the uniforms, but everything else has changed. And that's just the way it's going to be going forward and by the way, this is still going to be a transition year, even if House passes and everything and nothing comes out of Congress. This is still going to be a yet another trend. Last year was a transition year. This will be a transition year.
Yeah, this playoff format's not lasting very long.
Now, look, as long as the SEC just keeps banging the drum here, and shout out to Matt Brown, who's had some really good newsletters about how they might be pushing it a little bit too far, where the other 27 conferences are going to start to rise up here pretty soon. I think, guaranteed spots for teams that don't win conference championships, I think that's going to end up being a line in the sand for a lot of people.
What's interesting is, though, maybe but it's also the ACC and Big 12 aren't saying no, that's bad. They're just saying we should get 3. They're not saying which I don't know about that. So
I don't know about that either. I think look, how about this? Let's just have the best 12 teams, and I don't want expansion. I think let's
I would like 24 and every conference champion gets in.
I see. Then you're getting
so many.
The FCS. The FCS tournament, I think, loses some people because it's too big. And there's more FCS teams, by the way, or at least there was last I looked. There are more FCS teams than there are FBS teams.
If you're talking about, I think the maintaining an illusion of balance and maintaining an illusion of this is not the NFL with the SEC being the NFC and the Big Ten being the AFC. Mm-hmm. Everyone before the season thinking it's not likely, but there's a non-zero chance.
There's a path.
We win we could win a national championship if we win all our games. That's never happened in the history of college football ever before. Yeah. That if you win all your games, you are guaranteed to be the national champion. I think you get, because there'll be 10 conferences with the Pac-10 or 12 or whatever coming back, whatever it's called now, and then you'd have plenty of room for at-larges. You could even do the 4-4, 3-3, and then everybody else. So you'd have 3 extra from the SEC, 3 extra from the Big Ten, and you still have a ton left over. So
see, I think that's what our commissioners would want. I think Mr. Sankey is all on board with something along those lines, but I think we got to draw the line in the sand here about having certain conferences get certain weight. Look, they're always going to be the stronger leagues. They got more money, they got more TV, they got and that's fine. Like that's okay. But the competition on the field needs to remain. So the NCAA tournament and it is certainly it's a somewhat flawed, but it's a great event, even with the picks the nits that you can pick with it. Because if you are a MEAC team and you run out at 33-0 during the regular season, you're going to be seeded fairly, appropriately in the NCAA tournament. Like it's not going to happen, but there's a path. You know what I mean? And I just want to see that all the rules apply fairly to all the conferences. This is never going to be a sport of equals. It has never been a sport of equals in the history. This is not like the NFL where we throw draft picks at bad teams in the looking for parity to drive artificial parity. It's never going to be that. This is the Premier League. This is the English table. English system with promotion, relegation, all that stuff.
And that's the Champions League model. And the Champions League model is like auto bids, right? Like the EPO is 4. So that's kind of, I think, that
top
what
3, whatever your league is.
But that weighting is based on past performance in the Champions League. So the reason that England now gets with the new format, I forget if they get 4 or 5 directly. I think it's 4 to Europa League and then 1 for the new European Cup, the third tier European competition. But that's based on past performance. It's a coefficient ranking.
Yeah.
And each country, and then so that way, if you're Austria, you would have to win your league to play Champions League football, but also you might even have to play in a play-in game to get to that the final field of 36. So yeah, if we want to put in like a past performance metric based on how conferences have performed over time, at some point,
I think that's what they're trying to do, but they're also trying to codify these numbers so they can while they have the advantage, keep the advantage.
Where you're losing me, and when you talk about, hey, we're going to get 4 in the SEC, 1, play the games, you're probably going to get 3 or 4 every year. You don't need to have that auto bid. But now we're going to say, hey, we're not going to do a conference championship. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, and because now that 4th seed and 3 seed means so much, we're going to do a play-in game where it's 5 versus 4 and 3 versus 6 or whatever to get those last 2 spots instead of a conference championship game. And I'm sitting here like, why? That is a bridge too far. And I get conference championship games are a little weird now because you're going to punish SMU for losing it. You didn't do that, but now Alabama's upset that SMU got in.
Not like in Georgia, Carson Beck got hurt in the conference championship game last year. I'm sure they would have much rather have just taken an L and moved and said you can win the conference championship, but you don't get Carson Beck for the playoff. They probably said, we'd rather have Carson Beck for the playoff.
But as the SEC, you're going to get that benefit of the doubt regardless without having that 4th guarantee. I just don't like the weird play-in on the SEC schedule because then all of a sudden that really feels like you're doing 2 completely separate divisions saying like, well, we're going to play our 6, and if our 6 seed beats 3 seed or whatever, however it's going to do it, now they're going to get that 3 seed because we auto bid so we can just choose who the 4 are. That just feels very weird.
I have seen across college sports for a long time, I have seen teams punt basketball conference tournaments in the major leagues because, they thought it was in their best interest, rest over rust. If you're playing a Friday, Saturday, Sunday with your final on Sunday, selection Sundays that day, and then you might have to play on Thursday, you'd rather have the rest. So you just punt early and, you run your scrubs out there, you don't play whatever. I've seen that. I've seen Cliff Godwin at ECU in conference baseball tournaments, maybe run his starter out there for 5 innings, his number 1 guy, his Friday night guy to start the tournament, and then just shut it down the rest of the way so that he won't have any, you know what I mean? I don't care if they win the conference tournament or not. Yeah, a lot of times they're going to be a 1 seed, they're going to be hosting whatever. So I've seen that, you know what I mean? That's just part of what has happened across all college sports for a long, long time. I
Mm.
think maybe football just sort of has to like either accept that, and say, okay, well, sometimes we're going to punt this game, and the hundreds of millions of dollars that's generated to the economy of Atlanta is sometimes going to be for naught. You know what I mean? Because some teams that's just, is that it's basically going to be what other sports have done for a long time now. And what's the solution there? I don't really have one. That's why I kind of liked having the conference championships as protected seeds. But thanks to guys like Maddox Madsen and Kevin Jennings getting their asses kicked this year and just getting whipped in that first weekend,
Wow.
that was just never going to be a sustainable model going forward, unfortunately. And I would have liked to have seen a couple more years with a little bit more evidence and with House, because I do think that there's a possibility here where some ACC teams, some Big 12 teams that are spending the full $22 million, would be able to compete. You know what I mean? Especially if they, recruit well, pick well, can hold kids for whatever reason. I would have liked to have seen it with a bigger sample size. But watching that first weekend this year where people just got, doorsed off for bad football, it's college football. There's no such thing as bad college football, but it was 4 non-competitive games that first weekend. And I think that's probably a big part of what happened here. I would have liked to have seen them play out more.
Yeah, there's got to be some reward for winning your conference, I would think.
Has to be.
Hosting a game or something. There's got to be some type of reward for winning your conference. That's why I was
Arizona State should have, you know what I mean? Like it would have been
Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon, hey, congratulations. You got hosed. You didn't play an opening weekend, and then you don't get to host a game. I think everyone would rather host a game and not get that bye.
Yeah,
but,
so
hey, who knows?
There's still some kinks to work out, but I would like to see them go to where it's. I think the way you try to, as much as you can, to get back to regionality, get back to your conference being important, is making it where if you win your conference, you're automatically in, no matter what your conference is, and then having some type of at-larges outside.
Okay,
of that.
but then we're gonna especially with the new format, we're gonna see a CUSA team go to Ohio State and just get absolutely debased. And like I don't know if that's good for the sport.
Then Ohio State has gotten a nice seed for themselves, so that's usually how it goes. I mean, with first round of the NCAA basketball tournament, ones don't lose very often.
Destroy 16s, and I don't know if that's necessarily good for college football. I think it's fine for college basketball, but I don't think being.
I don't think you're going to sell a single. Now, it might not be great for you're not going to sell a single less ticket for a home playoff game.
Yeah, people are going.
An extra home game. People are going to. I just think I don't see as much of the downside, especially if you're like, all right, we want to be a 16 and have it open. It's like, all right, we'll just add. So you add 8 more, and you can get all the conference champions in, and still be basically the same amount of at-large teams.
So but here's what I would push back with this. I think a college football playoff, what makes college football special is that the entire season traditionally has been the NCAA tournament. One loss and you're cooked. You know what I mean? And so I think there's an expectation with the sport that's just different than it is in college basketball, where you expect a good team in the, a top 5 league, a good Big East team. If they go 11-7 in the league, congratulations. You're probably no worse than an 8-9 seed, maybe a 10 seed. You know what I mean? And I think there's just an expectation that's different. With football, I would just the thing that I've always wanted to protect with the playoff is every game's got to matter. We could be looking at 4 or 5. If we look at CUSA and Sunbelt, and actually the Sunbelt, I think probably ahead of CUSA at this point. But like we could see some Mountain West teams and some CUS teams just get absolutely wrecked year after year after year. And then year 4, year 5, it becomes like a 1/16 game. And remember, all these games are going to be standalone TV. It's not like they're going to be playing. It's not like the NCAA tournament where that 1/16 game is a destruction game, but you can flip the channel to something that's much more competitive.
Yeah.
That standalone game is going to be if it's a beating every year, nobody's going to watch it. And then you're slowly decreasing interest in the tournament. I think every one of these games should be special. I would say 12 is For me, I even thought 12 was a little much. I was leaning more like 8 to 10. You know what I mean? But I get it. I just the problem for me is that first weekend of the FCS tournament, nobody cares because those teams are matching up against each other, and 5 plays 12 on one side, or they do it in quadrants, but so 3 plays 6, and nobody's watching that first weekend of the tournament because they know they're going to go on the road to Montana and get wrecked. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's necessarily what we want for this product, but reasonable minds can totally disagree here, by the way. We're all still way early in this process.
Yeah, I think like the more access, the more the talent could potentially flatten out with money.
But that hasn't happened in FCS, and they've had this 2014.
Yeah, but they don't have
for a while.
I think their resources are. I mean, they would still be different, but like if everybody's getting television money, everybody's getting. I think the money's a little bit different at this level, but maybe not a ton.
Well, also,
but like don't you think USF would be able to recruit better if you said, hey,
yeah,
even if you don't go to, if like a team like USF, you don't go to you know what, you're not going to go to a Power 4, but if you win the American, you're going to make the playoff every year and have a chance to compete, and you have a little money, like USF, Tulane, like those teams that have a little bit of money that could, I think that recruit pretty well, but now all of a sudden you give them where hey, you win your conference, you're in the tournament every year. I think their recruiting can pop up.
But I think that's also like that. I mean, that's the same thing that every coach in the Ohio Valley has been using to recruit in basketball for decades. And when was the last time the Ohio Valley won a game in the tournament? So if you're playing the same sport, you're in the same division. I think that's important. This whole like split the G5 off, have a separate tournament. No, get out of here with that. Like, miss me with that wholly.
Sure.
I think that's a terrible idea.
What if you had a tournament?
We already have a split off. It's called FCS football. And FCS
what if you had a
fine,
tournament of G5? What if you had like 2 spots for the G5 and you had a tournament of the conference champions to get those spots?
No, because I would, because then you're still you're separating the format.
But then the 2 that win the games get into the big tournament. So you would give getting the 2 best. You just don't like that either.
I would say like that's the same thing that we have right now with the first 4, and I think the first 4 hasn't necessarily been. It's been great for the city of Dayton and their local. I went to a game there once in 2012. It was delightful place to watch basketball. But I don't think that that's necessarily good for college football. Look, we can start making exceptions. I get the thought, but then also, if you go to 24 for a team that is in the bottom 16, so a non-top 18 that would have a bye, the bottom 16 teams would have to win 5 football games.
Yeah. And
in week 2, in their second round matchup, they're going on the road to a top 8 team that's most likely going to seal club them. So
I think if you went to something like that, you could also reduce the regular season back to 11.
And you can't do that though because of the TV money. There's no way that they can backtrack. The SEC,
if they make the SEC play 9 conference, if everybody has to play 9 conference games, you get 2 out of conference games.
If you go to the
if you win your conference, then you win your conference, you're in. So this number of games would be the same as it would be now if you did that, but
right,
you wouldn't potentially lose a home game every year.
Exactly, you're losing a home game. You've made FCS.
My pitch was always exhibition game against an FCS school week 0 as a home game for everybody. Was always my.
But nobody's paying that. So then the money that FCS, a lot of FCS subsists on that money, and so the rule is you have to have full scholarships to have the FCS game count towards bowl eligibility. That's always been the rule. So like Pioneer League teams like Jacksonville's, UC San Diego, like Drake, like schools like that are in that league, they don't get the paycheck games because if you beat them, you do not get bowl credit. And famously USF made that mistake one year. They played an FCS game against a team that did not offer full scholarships. It affected bowl eligibility.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it happened. Leroy.
Hate it when that happens.
We love you, Leroy. I literally think that's like the only mistake the man made is the athletic director. So But that
we might have to spin this out into a blog boy roundtable or something. But let's get back on topic here. You were out, Colin, at the golf tournament, so let's talk a little bit about golf. What did you see out there? Just having interesting conversations. I did see some video of out there where you had a nice the USF flag was waving next to all the other school flags. So how was it out there? Weather probably pretty nice.
So as I did actually during the tournament, I hated the hotel that I had originally booked, which was by La Costa. I was there for 2 nights. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. Literally, the housekeeper walks in on me, just doesn't knock, doesn't anything. I'm like in the bathroom and taking a shower. The housekeeper walks in. What the hell?
Dangerous.
Dangerous. So it was not ideal. So I actually moved down to Torrey for the last couple of days, and I stayed, on the hotel that is on the 18th fairway on the north or on the south course. And look, I no secret to you guys. You guys know me. San Diego is the best city in the world. I've gotten to travel a little bit. I'm very lucky. I think San Diego is the best place to live on the planet because you have all of the most beautiful weather year round. And weather is a massive factor in this tournament. And we'll get into that a little bit. But by the way, so La Costa, which hosted last year for the first time, is now signed through 2028. So it's going to be the final course now through 2028. And it is for the men and the women. Having seen it and been on the ground for it, I completely understand why they made this decision. This should be the Omaha of college golf. It is that good. We'll get into that. But what I saw is that this is a fantastic event. I went down to when we played at the concession 10 years ago and USF made the quarterfinals. And I thought that was a really well-run event. It was great. I thought the student athletes had a great time. Bryson DeChambeau ended up winning. And I thought that was a really fun thing to see. And then to see it grow to this 10 years later, massively impressed with just how it's run, how the athletes get treated. All of the bells and whistles are out there. Those 30 teams that qualify and the best individuals are getting something that's worthy, in this event. This is fantastic. And by the way, there's a rule that has just been passed that no teams in college golf can now play La Costa all year round. So there'll be no college tournaments at La Costa. You can't, as a team, go out and take a day trip and go play. Now, if some guys are individuals and they want to they know somebody over there and want to pay the fee, then they are more than welcome to do so, but you can't go as a team. So that course is going to be now sacrosanct. So it's got a little bit of an Augusta feel. It's not quite Augusta, but it's a really nice course. And
that's what I heard. There was the head coach at Texas's idea to hold it there because they wanted a place somewhat. Or that's what he says, at least, right? I saw. I think he's talking to Dan Rappaport or something like that about it. But the idea was to have one spot. It was just most of the places wouldn't shut down for the requisite 3 weeks. 3 weeks you need to get the course ready and then have the tournaments. Mm-hmm. But La Costa, I guess, does or will.
And the best part is it's a resort. So all the kids are staying in these. Look, I didn't stay there. I was going to burn a Hilton night, but I chose not to. But the rack rates are $590 a night, and all of the players are getting their own individual room. USF sent their SID grad student, very nice kid, and he had his own room. You know what I mean? Everybody's getting their own stuff. You're doing that for 30 teams for a week. You know what I mean? It's a big investment that the NCAA has made here, and I think it's very, very worthy. And I think it's been great for college golf as a whole. The women's tournament that I missed that had happened was a massive comeback. Northwestern came, back from the dead basically to win the national championship. And it was super dramatic and really cool. I think if you're a fan of college golf, first of all, you might know this course already. It's just been remodeled in the last year.
Is it Gil Hance?
It is. And so if you see this course, I think if you follow the sport, you're going to be able to know, we know Augusta. Everyone, I've been to Augusta once, but I went to Augusta and I knew every hole. You know what I mean?
You've seen them.
Watch the Masters every year. I mean, if you watch the Masters every year, you don't want to hit it left on 11, and what the wind is everything on 12. And then now they've backed up the tee on 13. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so you kind of know that course because of what they've done. And now with La Costa, they've tried to do that as well. And I think that'll be good for people who follow the sport closely, that they can sort of project that out.
And it's a destination, right? It's hey, this is what every year, this is what we're trying to get to. It's the same spot. You can brand around it too. And
so USF had to play up near Seattle to qualify to get to La Costa. And so they were up in Seattle playing in like 40-degree weather, rain, humid, kind of gross. Played fantastic on the last day, to qualify by 3 shots to get there. You're not going to have that problem in San Diego. Yeah. And so with if there is anything that's a little wonky, it's that USF's tee time on round 1 they were first group out with the first group out. So you play 5. Your 5 guys are playing with 5 guys from Texas Tech and 5 guys from Georgia Tech. I think USF had, and so you're paired up 1 through 5 all the way through. And actually, Peacock for USF was playing with last year's national champion and he was the last guy to go off for USF. So you're seeing this, and so they had the Bulls start at 6:52 a.m. Well, I've been in San Diego enough. It's one of my favorite places. I knew, they better score on round 1, because in round 2, if you've ever played afternoon golf in San Diego, and I've played Torrey Pines in the afternoon before, and when it gets hard, when the course starts to dry out, it gets hard, it gets impossible. But in the morning, you can really score. Yeah. So the thing that I would say is that the weather is probably going to be, and the reason is because every day in San Diego looks exactly the same in May and June. It's called May gray and June gloom, which is you're going to have fog every morning. It's going to be, not humid. It's just a low level, dense fog. It's going to keep everything nice and soft. And then by about 11:30 in the morning, that's going to burn off. And of course, it's just going to turn into a rock fight. Like if you have a 1 p.m. tee time, you're playing a completely different golf course than people playing at 6 and 7 a.m. And so having that in balance, and how you balance the third round, because right now the format is you play round 1, round 2, then round 3 is based on scores. It's a complicated. I still don't quite honestly, I don't totally understand the formula. And then there's a cut, goes down to 15 teams. 15 play at round 4. That's when they determine the individual champion. Then the top 8 after that, the top 8 teams move on to quarterfinals, semifinals, and national championship, which is all match play. Yeah. 5 players playing against 5 players. Total points wins.
So USF ends up finishing, I think, 25th out of 30. What else did you kind of get being around the team, watching? They did have some lovely golfing Rocky hats, it appears.
Yeah, I actually may or may not have made a joke or 2 about that logo. We're out there, I was like, oh, great logo. Would you like to see the cease and desist letter we got when we had one first? So
on white hats too. It wasn't even like there's not even a little bit. Oh man!
And ironically, I think it's kind of cool that they were wearing the white hats. What's the most popular one that we had? The black hat. I think that's probably appropriate and fair. So
I see some black hats in this picture too. They're really coming through.
They did have those out there too. But yeah, I walked the first 9 with Jake Peacock's his parents and his sister were out there. His dad, just walking and super interesting, like really thoughtful, cheering him on. I saw a lot of that. There were a lot of people. Texas Tech you'd have thought it was a home basketball game. They had so many people out there. They really traveled super well for this thing. I thought it's a great event. As far as USF goes, I think what we have to start considering now is with House, is it going to be possible? Because some of these kids at the better, the top tier schools that are winning these national championships are starting to get NIL money, are starting to get, some outside sponsorship type of dollars. And if that's the case, how is USF going to be able to compete? Talking to head coach Steve Bradley, there are NIL dollars. They are not big, as you would expect for a men's golf program in the American Conference. Are they good? So what should be the level of expectation for a men's golf program like USF? Well, conference championship in the AAC. I think this was the 6th or 7th one that Steve's won since he's been here this year. Jake Peacock, 2-time AAC champion as the individual. I think that's certainly a level of expectation and something that, USF should be able to continue. But, man, you see some of these kids out here, like you go out and you watch Texas or Arizona State, some of these boys, there's some big dudes out there that are really legitimate athletes. Mm. And you can really see it on the golf course. USF, I don't think you don't necessarily have to be a big dude to be a good golfer, but you're seeing a lot of kept-to-like guys out there, just the body shape. I'm watching, on day one in the morning when the course is still very soft, and I'm seeing a guy that's playing with Jake on a 622-yard par 5. And the reigning national champion and Jake Peacock, all three guys are in the fairway, and Jake and his playing partner were both laid up. And this other kid goes 622-yard par 5. Course is soft as a marshmallow. He's going, yeah, I'm going for it. You're just going, oh my god, 622-yard par 5, not downhill.
At the end of the day, that man, that man's going to be a USF Hall of Famer. And then, ironically enough, they didn't actually win the conference championship. They placed second in a ridiculous playoff. Jake Peacock did win first, but still made it as an at-large, and then won in Washington, or got 4th place in Washington to get to the national championship. It's really cool that the last 2 times USF has been there, you've been able to be there, and it just seems really nice that they've kind of found a home in California. Because that looked great. The videos, I've known Colin Sherman for a long time, and your photo and video, unfortunately, sometimes is like you took it out of a potato.
So bad.
You took some really crisp some photos. I'm like, did Vanessa give you her camera? What's going on here? This looks great.
It was
Jake and like the number one, like one of the top players in the world, just walking down the tunnel. Like that looks really cool.
That was a really cool shot. And that's the thing about being at this event is that you can walk it just like you would at any, if you've ever been to a PGA tournament, you're just walking outside there. You can sort of walk anywhere. Well, the difference here is there's nobody crowding around any specific hole. It's not like you could just walk right up and talk. Players were talking to the gallery, as they're walking in between holes, as they're going from green to tee. There were a lot of conversations. It's a very casual atmosphere. And then as you get to, so sort of the Amen quarter of La Casa, is like, there's the tee on, the tee coming in, or the green on 15, you can sort of see on the left, and 16, par 3, you can see that like right there. And then 17 goes out. And then 18 coming back as a 600-yard par 5 as well. And so you're seeing like the 15 green, all of 16, 17 tee, the green's a little bit hidden, and then comes down. You can see the tee shots coming in on 18 and the green coming in. And there's sort of like a hill there. And everybody's brought, they brought chairs, people were set up there, and they were there to watch golf. And I thought that was really cool. And I think as this event continues to grow and is there, I think that will continue to be a thing. Tickets were, nominal. I didn't even look. I would assume they were probably no more than like $15-20, but they had, refreshments, food out there, everything like that. But man, if you love golf, there's no place to be. I actually, when I was leaving the airport to go get my rental car, 2 guys on the rental car ferry, they were golf agents. They were just out there trying to meet players and all that kind of stuff. And they were just like, yeah, we're just here to shake hands, kiss babies, and see some guys that might be potentially part of this in the future. I would like to see this event. I'm not saying the PGA needs to clear out for a week. I know they'll never do that. But I would like to see maybe this event take some precedence on the golf calendar, especially the time of year. If they could figure out a way to move it to the week before the U.S. Open potentially. I don't know if that's possible with the way the calendar is now. But the other things, like, talking about first class event, every rage ball is a Pro V1, man. Out there, I'll get a rage ball. Every rage ball is brand new Pro V1. There were not the equipment trucks, though. I thought we would possibly see the equipment trucks out there. They were not there. But I think maybe in the future that's become something that, like, as this event continues to grow and grow, and that's the advantage of having it in this one space. And also, like, you're in like one of the most beautiful parts of the world. Like, if you play early, you can go to the beach. It's 10 minutes at most to the beach. You can go watch sunset. it's fantastic. And having it in this one spot is, I think, fantastic. I think it's great for USF to get that experience. I talked to Steve about that. Wilhelm Riding, who was a sophomore and is still finding his way. Coach Bradley called him the most talented kid on his team, and I was interviewing him after, I think, round two, and at that point it was pretty clear that USF was probably not going to be moving on after round 3. And I said, well, what did you think of this experience? He was like, oh, this has been unbelievable. This has been amazing. And he's like, yeah, I hope I get to play here again someday. I was like, it's going to be it's here through 2028 now. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. So he's getting that kind of experience, you know what I mean, that he's going to be able to use going forward. And I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, who knows how that's going to play out while they do that as a program. If you come year after year after year, how that 3 to 4 year goes, or if you start, like, if you're an SEC school, you start throwing money at guys who've been here 1, 2, 3 years in a row and being like, hey, I need you here. That's going to help.
Yeah. And then how does NIL affect things? If T. Boone Pickens was obviously a huge Oklahoma State men's golf booster. It's how they won national championships, yada, yada, yada. Do you have some booster that's just really into men's golf going out there, going to these kids and going, okay, next year I want you, and you coming here? You know what I mean? How does that change the dynamic? I don't know. But
collusion,
yeah. Like like Augusta, they're no longer Augusta State. They are now Augusta University again. They've changed their name like 3 times apparently, but they've won the national championship before at the D1 level. Even though they were a D2 school at the time, they were playing up at golf, and they had Patrick Reed, who's really good, and they had won. And I'm out there, and you could just see, like, guys like that, like, you could almost feel the difference because they just did not have the level of support behind them that you would see, at some of the bigger schools where, again, Texas Tech just had 1 million people out there. So, and Texas too. But also, by the way, Texas is the host of the event. So even though it's played at La Costa, the host institution is the University of Texas. Just like when the Frozen Four is in Tampa, the host institution used to be Alabama Huntsville. And I forget who it was in the last Frozen Four that we had, but Huntsville had shut down their program. And we got some other, was it Arizona State or something like that? Hockey, like we had some other team to be the host institution. So Texas is technically the host institution.
Speaking of Omahas of a sport, Frozen Four should be in Tampa every year.
100%. I mean,
tell me wrong.
If we're going to this, and I think probably for college sports in the long run, I think it's a good thing. I think we should probably have Frozen Four in Tampa every year. Omaha for baseball, Oklahoma City for softball. La Costa's locked up. I can't see that even in 2028. I would be stunned if that goes anywhere because that is such a good setup that they have over there. Unless the course of the club wanted to change it, I can't imagine anybody else would.
Oregon's the track, right?
Oregon. Well, I don't think that's permanent. I still think that that's still possible that moves. But yeah, and it's Tracktown USA. Like that, I've never been there, but they say it's amazing. I would say that's going to these permanent sites. I think it really does create a different kind of buzz and a kind of permanence where teams can talk about it all year. Every college baseball coach in February at camp, the last meeting, all right, guys. Omaha, 1, 2, 3, Omaha. You know what I mean? And it's become a thing. And now for both men's and women's golf, 1, 2, 3 La Costa is going to be a thing.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3 Cancun for some programs.
Yeah.
So before we get out of here, because we went a little bit long, but we had a pod by the bay in a while, so that's all right. Both you guys, quick thoughts on baseball. Their season wrapped up, but pretty good year. Overall, I think I read it was the most wins since 2018. 31
most wins since 2018. They were top 3 in the conference for the first time since 2018. Mitch Hanna's first year, and they started out really strong, had a pretty big dip in the middle of the season, and were able to rally to get 2 of 3 out of FAU and ECU at the end of the season. Clearly, ECU was holding some gas in the tank for the conference for Clearwater because they were able to beat USF twice. But to come back and rally and win 2 games, first of all, we'll touch on this, but shout out to Colby Alfrey for jumping on with the Bay Area Examiner and doing some really great work with Clearwater. If you haven't read his stuff on Substack, please do. It's a pleasure. He also wrote an opinion piece based on it. We will get Colby on the podcast. Didn't work out this week just with everyone's schedules, but we will get him to talk about his experience there. But buddy, if anybody's going and saying anything poorly about this baseball program, I got nothing to tell you, because this is what, based on where they were before.
Yeah,
this was huge. We had played exciting baseball. You had a lot of people really interested in what was going on in Clearwater, and anything can happen in Clearwater. You just, again, a double elimination. When you lose that first game, it's tough to really have to crawl back and win 2 in the semis, especially when it's ECU and, tough guy Cliff Godwin.
Most league victories since joining the American, and then they won 7 of their 9 conference series. So, and recruiting seems to be doing pretty well. It was good last year, and it seems like they're kind of keeping it going here. So,
baseball. We've all said this, like with the facility they have and the investment in that program, the people that care that program, USF should consistently be in the NCAA tournament more than they're not. And it seems like this was a good season to be on that path. Also, shout out to 2 former USF coaches in Mark Kingston and Billy Mall. Creighton did win the Big East. You say, oh, Creighton won the Big East. That means they beat UConn. And if you beat UConn in March, or excuse me, if you beat UConn in May, okay, in baseball, that is one of the great feats in all of American sports, because they just don't lose. They don't lose conference tournaments. And so shout out to the Blue Jays and 2 former USF guys there. But yeah, I'm very excited for the future of baseball. Look, I think this rising tide's going to lift all ships. All of college athletics is still in flux right now. We're all sort of in a hold pattern. You can't really plan for the future the way that you want to. And that goes for all sports. That's, revenue sports as well are sort of in that same boat. It's really hard. So let's just sort of enjoy these athletes as they come through, and hope that USF is able to put together some short-term plans to find some success in whatever sport that is. Yeah, and shout out to lacrosse too. Like, that's a hell of to have to come from nothing to the season that they had, that is fantastic progress. I watched a little bit of that national championship game between North Carolina and Northwestern, and
North Carolina was a buzzsaw, weren't they?
Oh my God, they were unbelievable. Northwestern's been the power in that sport for a long time, and they just got flattened.
It's funny, you had me watching the men's final on Monday. Memorial Day was actually I'm curious if they do that every year. It was Maryland Cornell. I didn't realize that Maryland was a powerhouse in lacrosse. I messaged a friend of the pod, Alex Kirshner. Hey, you watching Maryland lacrosse? He's like, oh, how bad are we losing? This is an annual tradition at this point. And I went, what are you talking about? And I looked, I was like, oh my goodness, they're in the final or in the tournament like 20 straight years, man. And they won a national championship earlier. Anyway, I was shocked. And then I'm sitting here like I'm into lacrosse because Coach Mindy got me into women's lacrosse, and now I'm just wanting to learn more about the sport. So I absolutely love what they did. Obviously, JMU apparently is a classic conference rival. JMU Dukes are a powerhouse in women's lacrosse, so something to look forward to. But shout out to her and getting this program rolling year 1 and getting people interested.
I think she did a good job with outreach too.
Yeah, like I grew up in Philly where the lacrosse kids, that was a thing, you know what I mean? But lacrosse was always Baltimore. It's not just Maryland. Johns Hopkins for years, they're D3 program. They played D1 lacrosse and have won national championships. That area of the country is sort of like the hotbed of the sport. So it makes sense that, and now they're, trying to bring it south as well. But that they always say lacrosse is, one of the fastest growing sports in the country. And it's nice to see that USF is still adding programs when so many programs are just cutting sports left and right. Shout out Utah.
Oh my God.
All right, so let's wrap up with a couple of announcements here, both concerning Patreon. So Vito talked about our Patreon at the top. You can join us patreon.com/the Bay Area Examiner, where we've been gone from the public feed here, but we've been doing podcasts there, the Ponderosa, for the Patreon members. We've got a couple announcements if you're on the fence about Patreon, which we'll see. You got to make the cut here for this first one. But we're this summer, right? We don't have a ton of games to discuss this summer, so we're going to do kind of a patron series. We're going to have our members of our Patreon join us and kind of let them run an episode. So one of the extra episodes you get each month will be run by a patron. So we'll get kind of special interest, different things like that.
Are we auctioning these off? You got to pay for this, or is this just like the best idea wins?
This is just, we're just going to see. We have one that I'm already penciling in. I haven't talked to anybody else, but Discord member Vegetable Lasagna wants to do a discussion on Seinfeld side characters. That one's on the board already.
Classic.
Yeah. So we I may see if we can talk him into doing a draft of that, maybe. But that Seinfeld side characters is on
Nazi
the board.
#1 overall.
See, somebody said Frank Costanza.
Frank Costanza.
If he's considered
incredible.
a side character, then yes.
Putty was that's going to be the question. What's the appearance count? Because Bookman,
I think everybody but the core four. I mean, take out the core four and everybody else.
So I think that one's penciled in. But
Newman,
we've got
Newman's got to be a first-round pick then.
Yeah, I guess technically that's what we're going to have to really wrangle with the definition here.
Yeah,
it may be an episode count possibility. We'll see. George Steinbrenner's also up there. Laughs per minute, laughs per line. So we'll and it's funnier now that Larry David's doing the voice. Like,
well, that they brought in Steinbrenner to actually do it. He was so bad they had to they had to redo it.
So so I think that one's penciled in, but we're kind of letting people throw in topics. We've got some interested parties already, but that's kind of what we're going to be doing over the summer. We don't have as many games to talk about, but we will do that. That's one of the things. And then another thing we're in the initial planning stages of, but we all saw, I'm sure, the trailer today for the next college football video game that came out, but that doesn't come out till early July. So we've still got time with our degenerates playing the college football 25 game, and we're going to try to put together a tournament and crown a Bay Bowl champion. So we will try see how we can put this together, but this will be another thing we probably do with patrons this summer. A Bay Bowl. We'll figure out what the prize is beyond just this beautiful logo with your name on it and the just unbelievable trophy there with a bull's head there. So we'll get that figured out.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I thought that was a seashell. Oh, Seth.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. That's kind of two of our plans this summer. Both involve patrons. So join us on Patreon. $5 a month gets you in the Discord, which is basically like our message board, and all the kind of insider information we get goes there. Then $10 a month gets you that and extra podcasts every month, so you can be part of that creator series. And then more higher levels than that, you get free merch and things like that, hats, things of that nature. So join us there, patreon.com/Bay Area Examiner. Make sure you subscribe to the Substack. We've got people writing, like Colby did a great job covering the baseball tournament. So that'll be used more and more often, and it may be used for sports beyond USF as we get into it a little bit more, but we'll see.
We've already real quick
for
we're dropping hits already.
Yeah, just real quick, we're doing more with the Substack. Colin obviously wrote a lot about golf while he was out there. Former, I'm not going to say who it is, but we have a former writer who is doing the old Stampede through the roster that we used to do back in the old SB Nation days. So if you're part of the Substack, you're already starting to see those. We're up to, we just had one released today. So go ahead, subscribe. Go ahead, tell your friends. Up to 91. Dre Butler, I believe. Our good friend AJ Dunn-Poe. Amari Jackson did not push off. He is the one writing all these amazing articles. It's been a few years, but because of the transfer portal, because of new players coming in and out, it's about right to go ahead and do a quick
91 look defensive tackle Dre Butler today. So
yeah. So to go and subscribe to the Substack, there's still the written stuff out there that we do. Go ahead and tell your friends. And we also had Clinton Blair, one of our Patreon contributors, do a lot of good lightning talk during the playoffs and beyond. And a lot of this patron creator stuff we determined because of the really cool Discord community you guys have helped build with all the neat outside of USF and sports just content that we have. That hey, we realize some of you are really smart in your fields or have really neat content you're passionate about. Want to hear about it? So go ahead and join the Patreon to be able to hear that. It's a great
we've
way
got
to help
guys.
support.
We've got guys in there that have made thousands of dollars betting ping pong. So
That's not a joke.
it's
Thousands and thousands.
We've got a real crew of degenerates and interesting people in there. So we're going to try to give you guys a chance to. Maybe one of you will tell us how you win money in ping pong and really break it down for us. We'll see.
So I have hit those streets with those guys, and I've asked all the questions, and you guys know I'm a pretty good sports bettor. What these guys are doing is just some stuff I have never seen before. Like, it is just I can't lie, it is unreal when I'm watching these guys do. Also, now I don't know what I can say, but I am if I am not bound to do something else this fall during football, I guess that's what I can kind of say. If I'm not, and I don't have an exclusivity deal, which I don't know if I will or I won't, I am very excited to do some podcasts around college football win totals. Starting after the College World Series, I want to do some win total stuff. 2 reasons. 1, it's really fun and interesting content. It's a great way to preview the season. And 2, it'll make my ass. If you make me do one conference a week or something like that, it will make my ass actually put the work in and study, which I really need to start doing to be ready for the college football season. So if anything, I sometimes I do stuff for the blog and the website just to keep myself disciplined and on a schedule, because then I'm accountable to somebody else as opposed to just like, whatever. So there's some stuff that I really want to do related to college football this year. I am here in Vegas for a reason. And Seth, we also should probably talk about the little contest I'm probably going to go sign up for while I'm out here as well, is because there is now a college football picks contest out here, but we got to get a proxy. And the problem is that the proxies are charging so much that it really it stings, because we would need a proxy, and that is like they're charging like 40% of the value of the entry anyway. So it's like, oh, I don't know about that. But we'll figure out the math on that one later. I'm just gonna grab an entry anyway. So
dollar bills, y'all.
So help us get an entry into the contest by becoming a patron.
There you go. Join the Patreon.
That'll be a lovely piece of content every week, discussing how we make picks that go on this card.
Yeah, and those are going to be like, because they're gonna, I think the lines are going to open on like Mondays. You're going to have until whatever kickoff. So if you can bet the Thursday game, but if you bet the Thursday game, you got to get it in by Thursday, and your full entry. You can't just pick one game. So yeah, we will deal with that as it comes. All right,
we'll be back. Can't definitively say next week, but probably we'll get Stieg back. We've got track. They're in the midst. They got a bunch of people advanced to quarterfinals. So I'd imagine you'll get a pretty strong performance out of track here. But we'll try to come back next week and discuss who's moving on to kind of that national finals. I think USF will get quite a few guys and maybe some gals moving on, but we shall see. We'll be back next week. Like I said, join us on patreon.com/Bay Examiner or Substack, the Bay Area Examiner. That's going to be used more and more as we go forward. Thank you guys for listening, and go Bulls.
Go Bulls.